You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audio book club.
Hey everyone, Johnny here on behalf of Frankie and Dennis. Just wanted to say thank you for listening to season 2 of the show. We'll be back with a holiday special in December, and then we'll be back in 2019 with our 3rd season of the show. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next year. Thanks for checking out today's episode of Graphic Novel Explorers Club. I'm one of your hosts, Johnny. I'm joined by
Dennis.
And our special guest.
That's me?
Yeah, that's you.
Oh, it's Anthony. Anthony Siino.
And today we're discussing The Humans by Keenan Marshall Keller and illustrated by Tom Neely. We hope you've already read today's title because all 3 of us have read the book. So beware. Spoilers ahead. We would love for you to share your opinions and thoughts with us. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, at GN Explorers Club, or leave a comment on our Facebook page, or email us at, that's right, gnexplorersclub@gmail.com. Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are available. I almost screwed that up. I did screw it up.
You really did.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I still believe in you.
So, Siino, as I like to call you,
Yes.
and most people like to call you, you chose this book.
I did.
The Humans. Before we get into that, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a lover. I like long
Definitely.
walks.
You
Sometimes collar on, sometimes collar off.
You like pina coladas in the rain.
Yeah, I really appreciate being wined. Sometimes I like being dined, even. So aside from that and the fact that you can't see it, but I do have a lantern-like jaw, I am a... what's a good word for me? Public deviant?
Yeah. Which I think is reflected in your choice of comic book.
Thank God. So just broadly, I'm the host of the Voices River City podcast. Real good little thing if you're interested in community politics, if you're interested in arts and culture, if you're interested in local music. We recently had some of my colleagues, Luis Gael Jimenez and Jenna Booth, go out and do a segment on the Occupy ICE encampment. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there.
And this is here in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's all hyper-local stuff. Yeah. Hyper-local stuff. So if you have any interest in Sacramento politics, arts, culture, voicesrivercity.com. Go check it out. Other than that, I'm also an employee at a comic book store, Big Brother Comics. So that's the other qualification.
One of our favorites here in town.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Been around for a while now.
Yeah, almost it's something like 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
The current location, we've been there for about 2 years after the fire over at the J and 17th, 18th
Somewhere
location.
There,
Yeah.
I like that you sell games there.
Yes. Oh, there's a lot of great stuff there. I've picked up a few good board games, like the Dark Souls board game. Incredible. The Bloodborne card game, because I only buy video game board games apparently. It's a deck building game. It's great. Anyway, so those are some qualifications. I really like comics that either are transgressive or contemplative, or in the case of The Humans, that involve a lot of monkey dick.
There's a little human dick in this too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good amount. Good amount.
There's just dick everywhere in these.
That's what sold me. That's what Johnny said. There's just a lot of dick in
there.
I was
Dennis,
like, let's read it.
Dennis, we finally found the perfect comic book for you. A lot of primate dick.
I was perfect. I've been complaining about it for a couple of years now. We just not enough dick.
So should I intro the book here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Jump in.
So The Humans is, for those of you who are unaffiliated,
it's the name of the book.
You got to read it. It's the name of the book. So The Humans is a biker exploitation movie ripped straight out of the 70s and put into ink.
For sure.
It's 100% about just
Outlaw.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll,
Yeah.
putting tabs of acid on your mouth and washing them down with whiskey. Just incredible, heinous acts of depravity and violence interspersed with...
Some form of animal fighting too is in this.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that.
A twist on animal fighting.
And it's all about a motorcycle club out of Bakersfield called The Humans. And, of course, The Humans are, what we haven't said yet, is that this is all about monkeys, like apes, primates, gorillas. Like, they are the dominant species on Earth. It's a very... almost a Planet of the Apes sort of thing.
Yeah, you know what this reminded me of? Was when I was reading, I was like, oh, it's like someone took that old Lucas video game where you're the biker going across
Full Throttle.
Full throttle. It's like they cross Full Throttle with Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
I would love to see this made into a like an HBO series cartoon.
That's pretty much what
know?
it
Yeah,
would
that would
have
be
to
cool.
be.
Yeah.
You won't find
like,
this on
only if
WB
you-
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only if you do it like the Spawn cartoon, and by that I mean Keith David everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, he voices every single character.
Every character.
Yeah.
That's the only way I'm on board. So the short of it is it centers on this Bakersfield biker gang and their experiences as both like them fighting for turf, them looking to establish themselves beyond just being this sort of servant to like them being the servants of this corrupt businessman in town. Concurrently, the gang leader's brother, Johnny, comes back from the Vietnam War, and he's a little different than he used to
Yeah.
be. So that's kind of like the main thrust of Volume 1, which we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked how, like, I wasn't sure what I was expecting in this book, but I like, for whatever reason, and, you know, part of it's because I love, like, 70s films. I love just that era in general. I bought into the world immediately. I wouldn't think I would. Like, they don't do a lot of world building, like, you know, this is how things are. This
No,
is
you're
an alternate
introduced to
history.
a fight like right off the get go.
It's like 1969 Bakersfield, 1970 Bakersfield, and you think, okay, Bakersfield, whatever. But it's not the Bakersfield you think it is. And like you said, it's like a cross between Planet of the Apes and Easy Rider or something like that. And it's I don't know. I was sold on it almost immediately. I was like, I really dig whatever it is here. And for whatever reason, I meant to look up the artist, but it really evoked kind of that era specifically of art even. Like
it really reminds me a lot of Fritz the Cat.
Yeah,
Like that kind
exactly.
of illustrating style.
Like that adult animation.
The animated Fritz the Cat, not the
Yeah.
R. Crumb, the original
Right.
Fritz the Cat.
So you're talking about, was that Bakshi? Ralph Bakshi?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it was.
Or heavy metal.
That's
something-
really,
Yeah,
also
yeah.
about Bakshi. One of the things, we didn't mention her name earlier, but the colors by Christina Collantes.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's the whitest thing I've done in a minute. The colors are so beautiful in this
Mhm.
book.
Yeah, real
Uh,
vibrant.
Real vibrant, and like some of them, there's a lot of diverse colors, but you also have these really interesting. There are a lot of moments like when gangs are facing off against each other, there'll be flat shades for members of one gang and
Right.
different flat
Yeah.
shades. One will be yellow, one will be brown, and just like really strong
Well,
identifying.
Another thing I like is for episode 2 or 3 of our summer special, Dennis had purchased like a grab bag of just rando comics from the 60s and 70s and 80s, and you look in them and the illustration styles, they're the backgrounds are so flat. It's almost like Hanna-Barbera cartoons from the 50s and 60s where the background didn't really matter to the illustrator. They just wanted the cartoon action. And that's what, like, they got this just so perfect because the backgrounds sometimes are just nothing. It's just a flat panel color with the illustration on top of it. Because you're like, well, it's not really about, it's the characters in this. It's not.
Right.
You
Well,
know, and that's how getting back to my point was that's how a lot of the comic books were illustrated that we read too from that era where they were just like, we don't need it's not like nowadays where like it's so easy to do all this in a computer and just drop it in. That someone had to go through and hand illustrate everything, and it just comes across that way so well.
Right. And you can also tell that it's not just for lack of talent or time.
No,
or
not
It's
at all.
artistic
It's-
choice for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Whatever color palette they chose, I don't know. There was just like something that it wasn't like a filter where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna make everything kind of dusty. But there was something about it that really evoked that era.
It's really a
specifically.
lot of really good use of like muted olives
Yes.
and navy blues and like stuff that feels like it has a coat of dirt on it without
Exactly.
being that.
But then, like on this page where there's just a rumble, everything's real super fucking vibrant. Like you would have seen, like my parents probably had on a poster on the wall that was in these colors, and they would
Yeah.
smoke pot and
Mhm.
Oh, there's a bunch of stuff, like a lot of great, just like when, so Johnny, the character who's clearly suffering from PTSD.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are a lot of really great scenes where, like, when he's going through his stuff, colors get really saturated and, like, things are coming into, like, the realities are blending. Things in Vietnam are in Bakersfield. And,
Yeah.
and there's, what I really love is a lot of the way that it visually displays time. So like the page that we were talking about with the rumble on it, it's this 2-page spread with this kind of almost honeycomb structure.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, and it's all of these different characters appearing like as different points of their personal struggles in the midst of this greater brawl. And you could follow each little fight in pieces, almost flip booky.
Yeah.
But if you look at the page, it's not exactly obvious, and it's got that kind of chaotic. You're looking over here and you're catching this
Right.
part. You look over here, you're catching this part.
There's a fight towards the end when they're animal fighting, and the way they did like a cone across the page to show you, because when you first look at it,
Yes.
like you're like, wait, how's the sequence on the? Because it goes across both pages instead of it, going left to right down one page and then continuing on the second page.
Right. It's
And and it's done at a diagonal angle with these cones with the fight sequence happening in it. You're like, oh man, they just sequenced that so well.
right. It kind of like zigzags, right? And that, so like, and you're again with the colors, you've got this very clear between these divisions. You have one that's dark red and the other that's bright yellow.
Yeah.
And as you follow left to right on one, you realize you're supposed to follow right to left on other, and it's a fight that's very chaotic, that's moving
And
back and
vicious.
forth a lot.
It is a vicious fight.
Right. The way that everything is composed has a very clear vision of what sort of motions they're conveying and what sort of emotions.
And that's what really surprised me was, without kind of knowing the language of the book ahead of time, you are able to follow very well. So it's very skillfully done. However they execute, I don't know what kind of magic mojo they put on there, but like you said, the fights and such, it just felt natural. It felt like that's how it should be. Like you're kind of like, you feel the energy of the fight.
To kind of pull it out a little bit, this is particularly why I chose the humans. Because I have a friend who's just obsessively into comics, has like just buys way too many monthlies, all weeklies, all that sort of stuff. And he was just raving to me about this. Raving for years. And I was like, fine, I'll finally go read it. And it is so cohesive in its vision and what it's trying to convey. And every single element to it knows exactly what it's doing. The character designs are so vibrant that characters that you could never, I don't think they, like, there are certain characters, like the first rival gang, the Scabs. I don't think you learn most of those characters' names.
But
No.
you know who they are.
You know it, and you have very clear pictures of what's going on with them, what their beliefs are,
And like
even.
there's the one chick in here I love. It's she's a throwaway character. Because I don't think
yeah.
you see her later in the book at all.
You do.
Oh, is she?
But
gets
she
involved in
never
Rumble.
talks.
Yeah.
She just
But
looks cool as hell.
They you could tell they based her on like the Russ Meyer Faster Pussycat Kill
Oh, right.
Kill. That
Mhm.
the lady,
Like the
chick with the-
latex,
Mhm.
Yeah,
and
the chick
and
with
the
the-
leather gloves
yeah.
and the
so like
pompadour.
But and that's
It's incredible.
you bring up a really good point, because one of the things I found when reading comics is sometimes the art could be really good, but sometimes it's really hard to discern characters. Like
100%.
honestly, one white guy looks like the other, especially if there's a time jump. I don't understand if this is kind of a younger version or whatever. So I was afraid these are all a bunch of chimpanzees and apes. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to discern anyone. Yet they give everyone like something unique. An eye
Like,
patch, a hair
the guy with the
style,
head injury who's
Yeah,
got
right,
like half
right.
his
Scars.
Yeah.
jackets, everything. You can immediately picture, like you were talking about the Scabs, every member of that gang, members of the humans, Doc, all these people. And it's amazing to me that they're able, without trying to make a million different types of monkey species,
Mhm.
they're able to like create these distinctive characters.
And without, like, they're clearly building off of archetypes and stereotypes
sure.
and totally playing into cliches,
right,
but it never feels cliche.
right.
Ever. Like Johnny's brother, the leader of the gang, whose name I cannot remember because I'm a fool and don't make notes.
Oh.
And I lost mine before. I don't know.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Bobby just like is completely the cool and calm, suave guy, but he never actually like feels like a Fonzie or whatever.
Right.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a book like this, I feel like if you got it from anybody else, it would feel hokey. Like, I feel like a lot of people who would come into this creative project working in comics these days would feel the need to subvert it, to be ironic about it, to futz with it. And you can just tell from the beginning that these people are just, fuck you. We love bikes. We love monkeys fucking.
Right.
We love acid.
Right.
We're going to tell a story, and there's going to be we're just going to tell the story.
It's published by Image. I'm sure that has a lot to do with why they were able to get away with the story.
Image puts out some great stuff.
Yeah.
But it also, like, this reminds me of a lot of stuff I don't like about other comics. Like, this big thing we were just talking about with, like, clarity and how defined everything is in this book. Like, I've been trying to read Low. And if you guys check that out, extremely good if you like depression. But, like, it's got such a messy art style that, like, reading it, I feel like I'm not reading it because I can't tell who's doing what, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of great books get away with not actually clearly defining their characters.
Right.
But, yeah, that's a bit of a tangent.
Yeah, and, you brought up a good point. I mean, there are archetypes in here. I mean, how many times have we seen the PTSD Vietnam vet, right? I mean, we've seen enough films and television shows and books. I thought it was going to be a tired thing, but I really felt for Johnny and his
especially with him trying to just figure out if I got a sense of, like, remorsefulness from him where he's not even sure he wants to be in the gang. Like, he doesn't know where he fits in anymore.
It's a very Godfather-like.
It's clearly his family.
Yeah.
It's clearly his family, and they saved his bike for him, even though they thought he was dead, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They built a shrine to him, but that's how much they loved him, right?
Yeah. And, but, like, one of the things that's really heartbreaking in this is he comes back to Bakersfield and he's just walking down the street and the police, I got a sense of being trapped because the police are fucking with him and he's just like, I just want to be left alone. Like,
it's very much a First Blood thing.
Yeah. Just, but not like exploitive like that where, he's like, oh, I'm going to go out in the forest and fucking kill everybody, like that kind of thing. He's just like, leave me the fuck alone. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. Like, just let me be. And it's like, okay, because of the life you chose, that's not possible. And just our understanding of the Vietnam War all these years later where these poor vets were fucked with when they came back, like it wasn't like their parents when they came back from World War II where they were heroes. These guys were baby killers, the public were addressing them that way. And, or, having all these mental problems from the war and World War II vets were like, suck it up, it's not, we went through the same thing. And so anyways, that's a tangent I went off on.
No, I mean, that's one of the things that this book gets really well is, again, the nuance and an understanding of the characters, right? So, like, Johnny, you get the sense from, especially when you get into Volume 2, venturing into Volume 2 a little bit is, so at the end of Volume 1 is where they agree to take on this run to run these drugs on this dangerous trip. And so in Volume 2, they make the run. And Johnny does, like, insane shit because he figures he's gonna die. And it's one of those things where Johnny, but he also, like, reconnects with his old love. So, like, there's
which is hinted at in this book.
Right.
In the Volume 1.
So there's, like, a lot of stuff, like, watching Johnny be this incredibly vulnerable, and, like, the way that he responds to instability is really nuanced. And it usually looks like violence and extremity, but, like, it really plays into, in simple, broad strokes, really gets into, like, the fact that this is just a guy who wants to, like, he just wants to be a guy with family and just wants to be taken care of. And
again, he's a fractured person.
And that's actually...
He's a fractured primate.
Right, and motivations are laid out really well in this book, too. That's something else, just, like, with characters. Like, the motivations...
Let's get into the story.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead and get it going there.
Well, there are these monkeys, right? Well, so the book opens with there's this segment in black and white that's kind of like an introductory half issue.
Was this like a pilot almost?
Yeah, that's the sense I get from it.
Yeah, and it's setting up it's immediately setting up the craziness of this world of like, oh, it's not, the humans aren't humans, they're primates, and there are there's just extreme violence
Right.
pretty much from the get-go.
Mhm.
Right. It's just about this bar owner trying to get this biker gang to not take over his place because, bars are owned by particular gangs,
Mhm.
and the humans show up and just fuck everyone up.
And they're outnumbered. There's only 3 humans, and then there's 5 or 6
scabs,
of
yeah.
the scabs.
Right. And so it's just a quick rumble in which people are fucking stabbed and chains are brandished.
Yeah.
And it's really great. It just does a really great job of establishing this is like, it's what you know, but it's what you isn't. What you don't know, because what you isn't. I don't know what you're talking about.
What you
But
is
these
or
monks-
what you isn't.
Right, and it really establishes really early on one of my favorite things about this book that I would absolutely hate if any other book did it. But again, the sincerity of this carries it through. It establishes early this series penchant for using goofy onomatopoeia.
Oh yeah, knockout.
Yeah. So like one of the big punches is like the sound effect is knockout.
Right.
Like there's a bit in the second book where a truck blows up on the road and it says "ka-fucking boom." Like again, I would hate that if anybody else did it, but here it's just like you mean it.
Yeah.
You mean it. So yeah, it demonstrates these monkeys. I don't know if monkey's the actual term. I don't know what species it's supposed to be.
There's like orangutans,
Apes,
chimps. I think they're chimps.
Well, it's kind of like Planet of the Apes. It was kind of hard to, because there's chimpanzees.
They're so anthropomorphized,
Yeah.
but it's clear that there are like distinctions, that there are gorillas, there are chimpanzees. So I should know the difference, but I can't. Anyway, so it establishes that when the series actually opens up, it starts with
they're doing a ride through Bakersfield, because Mojo, one of the characters you introduced in the beginning, who like Johnny, the leader, Bobby has to rein in because he's just stomping this guy's motorcycle, and I got the impression like that was too far. Like, don't fuck with his bike, man. Like, beat him up, but don't mess with the bike, kind of thing. But you're just introduced to, they're doing this basically funeral ride for
poor Mojo.
For Mojo, yeah.
Yeah, and it establishes, it establishes pretty quick that the way that they eulogize him is the leader tells everybody to, like, has the resident poet read the poem.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they immediately start to party in the graveyard.
Yeah.
And I worked with a legit biker years ago, and really the stories he told me make a lot more sense when I read this. Like, I was like, wow, I guess that's really how it is. It's just a bunch of booze women, and women are just kind of
passed around,
and that was kind of the lifestyle back then.
Yeah, and then we talked about it earlier, but I really want to draw attention to it. This is where we see the first of many dongs.
Right.
And I want to take an aside to really point this out because, as I mentioned, so I've been working at this comic book store for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Called Dongs.
Called Dong. Yeah, Big Dong Comics. And, I've taken that opportunity to read a lot of stuff that, stuff like Saga of the Swamp Thing, The Invisibles, a lot of like stuff that's supposed to be transgressive, and particularly with The Invisibles, there's a huge emphasis on gender politics.
Mm-hmm.
And yet all of these books that I've read, very, very few of them, like, they're very willing to show women in complete nudity. They're in like certain amounts of exposure and all that sort of stuff, but never will you see a penis. Never.
Yeah,
You'll see a metaphorical one.
Yeah.
You'll see a dildo, but you won't see one attached to just a human body.
And rarely erect.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually it's like Watchmen.
Right.
Or, yeah, that's what I was
like
gonna say.
Watchmen actually pulls it off pretty well because it's not like, but like if you do, it's like played for comedy or whatever, right? But the humans, like, totally just plays out dicks the same way it plays out anything else.
Right.
And I feel like that's really important to this might be going a bit far. Maybe it's just because I'm starved for like this sort of balance in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that it actually plays a lot to the authenticity of the book.
I agree.
To not be squeamish about it. Because first off, there's nothing to be
because the
squeamish
characters
about.
are not squeamish about it.
Right.
I mean, they're partying, and one guy's getting a blowjob behind the tree while all of his friends.
But the
are right
way
there.
it's drawn too, it just doesn't feel exploitive.
Right, because
It's part of the environment. It's part of the lifestyle. It's part of their partying. But you don't feel like, hey guys, look,
you feel like another comic would have had like a real close up panel.
Right.
It would have been played for it almost a joke, suggesting a joke.
Well, I think some of it's a little R. Crumish or Spain Rodriguez kind of ish, where it's a little over the top. But
for sure.
But it's not out of the reality for these characters.
It's consistent.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
It's not gratuitously. It is gratuitous, but it's within them being gratuitous people,
right?
Or characters. They're just hellions. They don't give a shit.
Hedonistic.
They don't adhere to society's rules. So getting a blowjob in a cemetery while your friend just got put in the ground is not anything out of the norm for these guys.
Right.
It's almost expected for the clubhouse. One of the things so the guy that's getting the blowjob, he's
Doc, I think.
Yeah, he's an orangutan, and his brother seems to have a mental disability, and he's almost just like an orangutan that would exist in our world.
Right. It's very like he has like a word or two, but beyond that, he just runs around
pretty
and
much
hangs on things.
A wild
native
orangutan, like in our reality. And then the scabs show up at the funeral,
and there's some extra details on the scabs that are really great, because you see all the characters that are in the little precursor bit, but then you also see their leader, who wasn't there before, and he's dressed up like a Confederate.
Oh yeah,
Confederate general or something.
No, and one of them too. He's dressed up like a Confederate general, and like one of the members also has like an SS. I think.
Yeah, he's got a swastika.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so. I thought
an iron cross and a medal.
This is reading in too much. But what are comics about books where the authors aren't present? What are those for anyway?
Yeah,
right.
One of the things that I liked reading into about this book is that clearly the Skags have this sort of like white supremacist angle to them, right?
Totally.
But one of the things that is difficult to parse with biker culture is that, so since a lot of them are veterans, or were veterans when you see biker culture starting up, there's a reason a lot of them wear these German war helmets, have swastikas, iron crosses, eagles, those sorts of things. And it's hard to parse exactly why it is, but a lot of the reasons is that, like, for some of them, these were trophies. For some of these they're emblematic of the enemy and like taking on the hated image for themselves. And then some of it's just like, no, we are white supremacists or whatever, right? Anyway, I thought this was a really interesting way of demonstrating those parts, or like acknowledging those parts of biker culture as well, without even having to get into it, without having to get ham-fisted about, just saying like, yep, they're there, and they're just conveniently on the gang that we're not focusing on.
Right, totally.
So they fight the scabs and beat them up, and then it cuts to them back at their clubhouse with a big. Basically, they burn like a Viking funeral for Mojo's motorcycle.
They don't just burn it; they blow the fucking shit out of
it.
Like his ghost is like riding it, like Ghost Rider. I mean, that speaks once again. It's kind of over the top, Gonzo, but it totally I buy into it. That his spirit's riding this bicycle that's being blown up.
Yeah, and then you're introduced to Johnny, coming home.
Walking on the highway.
Bruce Banner style from the whole
Incredible
TV
Hulk,
series.
Yeah. And it immediately follows with one of my favorite scenes in the whole series, where Johnny is riding on this Greyhound bus.
Which is a cheetah.
The cheetah, please. And what's this type of primate here? I have no idea.
He looks like an orangutan.
Orangutan, yeah. This orangutan in this like plaid, this like check, what is that, crosshatch sort of suit, is trying to sell him the Bible.
Right.
Telling him, you can tell he's troubled, and all you have to do is, pray. And Johnny just tells him to fuck off. This line right here: "Don't you read the fucking news, old mate? God is dead." And as he flicks open the switchblade and threatens him.
The butterfly knife, he's like, flick.
Yes, but thank you. Correct. It's great. Like,
I have a really sad butterfly knife story. So you technically you're not supposed to get those in the United States. So when I lived in San Diego, my buddy and I would go down to Tijuana all the time because we weren't 21 yet, but we could get in there because we were over 18. And so we're walking through the areas where they have all the shops set up, and we go in this one place and they've got switchblades, stilettos, butterfly knives, and he finds one and it's like this matte black kind of cool looking little thing, and he's like, oh, this is so cool, I can carry it in my boot like Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs. He's like, I'll get boots and I'll just put it in there. And I was like, no, you're not gonna get boots, man. Like, so anyways, he sees the display one. He's like, yeah, I want that one. The guy's like, okay, gets it, picks it up, slides it into his underwear, and then we go back to the States. Next day, I was like, hey, let me see your knife. And he's like, yeah, sure. And he, he throws it to me, and I undo the latch, and I go flick it around. I was like, cool. Oh, dude, did you fucking see this? He's like, what? I'm like, you didn't see this. He's like, no, what? I'm all, it says ninja on the blade. Like, you're immediately not cool because your knife says ninja on the blade.
That's so good.
And he's like, God damn it.
You couldn't hear it, but I was cringing that whole time. I was waiting for fingers.
Oh, like he was gonna throw. No,
Yeah.
it was latched.
Okay, no, he was just a nerd then.
Yeah.
I like that the story ended with him being a nerd, not
Yeah.
like puddles of blood.
And that's why Johnny only has 3 fingers.
Yeah. Mhm. And one
Always meant
eye.
to ask.
Yeah, that's why, guys. That's why I have to wear an eye patch. But yeah, so Johnny rolls back into town, and I love all these like little nuanced things. Like, it's not Coca-Cola, it's Conga-Cola,
Right.
and Ape shall not thirst is the thing, and then Silverback National Bank. But I just like those little subtle little things hidden in the background.
Has it already been established at this point that humans are around, but they're essentially kept as pet slaves?
Yeah, that we had
Not
not
yet.
mentioned that.
Yeah.
So thanks.
But it just comes up right in here. It's like it's revealed in this. I don't remember if it's revealed first in the actual little preview thing.
I think there was a gas station attendant.
Yeah, there's a gas station attendant who's like, all the humans are naked
Mm-hmm.
and they're just chained up, and some of them. So it's established, not to where we're at in the synopsis yet, but it's established that one of the members of the humans keeps sex slaves,
Right.
like human sex slaves.
Basically, he's into bestiality for this
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're introduced to Johnny, and the sheriff is basically giving him shit, about being back in town, and he starts having flashbacks to when he was in boot camp and just all the hell he went through in Vietnam. And
Now, did you guys get the impression that Johnny was tough before he went in the army? Because he came off as really naive, which happens when you tell these stories, where it's like you're shocked by the culture of the military. But I wasn't sure if he was kind of experienced and then suddenly, like, now he's not the big guy on campus.
no,
Now
I think he just got drafted and he saw the fucking horrors of war.
Well, part of it is, you can see it particularly in the panels showing his training and stuff. He's shown with a pretty grim look.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is reading into it a little bit, but I don't think you'd be a beloved member of the humans without being
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating. So I was thinking that he must have been hard, but then now he's in this new environment. And before he went to war, obviously after he went to war, he was shocked by things, but the military kind of broke him down, and he was kind of a pussy in it. And which, that's what they're supposed to do, right?
Well, I think when you
Well, I think the only thing that it really shows him completely collapsing on is like being thrust into a new environment, having all his gear taken away,
Right.
and then having all of the people he's introduced to murdered one by one in front of him.
that was the
and then
thing.
put in a POW camp. I don't know. I feel like you're allowed to be.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is, like, no matter how tough you are, all of a sudden you're in a situation where you don't know anybody. The people you do know get killed fairly quickly, and you're thrust into war, and you have, that's a pretty common story you hear about when people would get to Vietnam for the first time. They were just like, oh my God, this was nothing happened like I expected it or was told would happen.
I guess
No one would talk to you because you were
Right.
green, and they're like, you're going to fucking die in 2 or 3
Well, they call him
days.
Catcher because he's the bullet catcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's the only one who lives, of course.
But so then Johnny is introduced back into the clubhouse, and everyone's like, holy shit, you're alive. And they start getting him drunk, and this is one thing where his brother sees him. He's like, "Hey, what's done is done. You're back. You're home. You're a fucking hero." And he's like, "I ain't nobody's hero," because he knows like nobody is a hero over there. We just all, it was hell. I was in hell, and I'm not anybody to be praised because of what I went through or did over there. I don't know. I just, that part of the story, I think they just did so well.
No, I really felt for his PTSD.
Yeah.
And
even though if you were just to see this person walking down the street, you'd be like, oh, he's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit fucking outlaw biker. But seeing his story, like, you feel a lot of sympathy for the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's really interesting in this part when he returns to this big party for this funeral for Mojo, and he very quickly establishes his new identity.
Right.
But he throws off the dog tags. I'm not the dead person you thought I was. I'm not the hero you think I am. I'm just one of you. Right. I'm a human. And
yeah, I'm a human and I'm back from the dead.
Right. And like the thing that's really interesting to me about Johnny is like, so we talk about how he seemed so aimless before. And then the book of the entire series of the Humans is about him and the consequences that come with diving completely into one of the big things about it is shows the ramifications of what Johnny, like, he dives completely into being a human.
Like literally and figuratively, he dives into a crowd of the humans.
Right. And like, it's actually a really good it's actually a really good thing to point out because I wasn't even thinking like that, literally. But yeah, it's like he dives so completely into it and he accepts all of these costs and ramifications that come with it. And especially when you get to Volume 2, I won't say anything about Volume 2, but like, it's extreme.
Even more extreme than this.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit.
That's the entire thing is like, he doesn't know how to deal with anything. So the only way he knows how to deal with these things is through full commitment. And so like, that's so much of what the books of this series is about, like the nature of commitment to each other, to ourselves, to ideals, and what those costs are.
Well, you get your second erect boner, because they just are pouring booze and drugs down his gullet, and he has a four-way with some chicks.
And yeah, right in the center of the panel is his dick.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah, and then you see he's a POW. He had been captured. And it's funny, the Viet Cong are like little like ring-tailed lemurs. They're not like the same species as him. But yeah, and he's just like, he's flipping back and forth between when he was a POW and when he was like, he can't, like, reality is fractured for this guy in this moment.
Like one of my favorite bits is when he runs to the bathroom and vomits, and then a blue spider comes out of the toilet for him.
But he must have eaten a spider. Like, he must have been able to get his hands on a spider when he was a POW and ate it.
Right.
Because he's seen that too. And so yeah, and then he pretty much.
Oh, I want to point out too, this whole sequence with him waking up in the aftermath of this party and kind of like having this episode and having these flashbacks. It does a lot of, one of my favorite things about this book includes its depiction of motion. So like when he's like the panel where he's about to vomit, the panel as he's walking through the living room, and seeing all of his fellow club members just like on the floor in different states of disarray. It shows him multiple times in the same zone. So like the vomit one, it's kind of like $6 Million Man sort of thing. Right. Like different shutters. Whereas like him walking through the living room, it's just him at different places in it. And the way, like, again, the way that it conveys motion and time, it's really simple but powerful stuff.
For sure.
I like.
Yeah. As the story continues, you see the horrors of war that he went through. Pretty quickly, he's in a helicopter, and I
really felt for his teammates. You only get introduced to them briefly, but man, I really wanted to like a whole comic with just them.
I know, right? They have like such clean personalities from the get-go.
It looks like there is at the back of the book. It looks like there's 2 other stories, like a prequel and then the Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Book too.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check those out.
But yeah, they all die. All of his friends just die horrifically, and then he's just he's having a PTSD moment where he's remembering, he's like living through being captured again, and then all of a sudden he's back with his brother and he's down on his knees and his brother's giving him a cup of coffee. His brother seems to like have no awareness that his brother's like flipping out. Basically, he's just like, "Here's your cup of coffee."
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then that's in many ways that's Johnny's fault with his almost false bravado. I mean, right when you were talking about him diving in and saying, I'm a human, all this, is he's saying that, but in his psyche, is he really healed? He's not. He's trying to cover up and kind of, almost pretend it's not there, but it's really the issues that are haunting him are still very much there.
Right.
So then Johnny's Bobby and Johnny are go out to their barn, to the clubhouse barn.
Oh yeah, Doc's like working on some new drugs.
I think it's PCP. Like I got the impression it's PCP with like a hallucinogenic element to it.
It's an amphetamine. I think they mentioned it somewhere.
Yeah, but like
it's like meth and acid.
Yeah,
combined.
And it's funny because it's not funny, but they're injecting it into a human being, and again, a real like a primate human being. And in this reality, human beings, again, just to reiterate, are animals. They're not.
Well, they talk to him. That's what confused.
Well, the
me.
humans never the human beings
never talk,
never speak.
Yeah.
But it seems like, well, it's possible. I mean, you talk to your dogs, right? So maybe they're able to understand
simple commands and stuff like that. So they're testing, much like we test on animals, they are testing this drug out on the human being to see its reaction. And it just like, he just like immediately hits all of his adrenaline, and he's just he's freaking out, trying to smash everything, and
then dies.
Yeah. And then Bobby gives his bike back to, or Johnny is introduced to his bike again. He's given his bike back. Moonbeam, that's the name of his motorcycle.
Oh.
And he's got
this lovely picture of Jerry Brown on the side of it. Sorry.
It's some sexy monkey woman. I feel like Mark Wahlberg at the end of he would fit well in this role.
Yeah.
The end of the remake, but so then you're introduced to the like the last third of the book where they're betting on human beings fighting each other and
cockfights.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so we get introduced to this character Abe, and Abe is this
Abe Simeon.
He's this businessman who runs this trucking company that he's good with the sheriff and all that, and
he's very boss hog.
Yeah, very very white suit and all, cigars, and he is this character who he's got connections to all the gangs. They do work for him, doing drug runs and all of his illicit business. And he's the one. So it's established that Bobby is trying to get the humans up to the next level to get this own drug of their own creation, to get enough money from Bobby to fund full production of the drug and pretty much go independent. Just be, themselves, not dependent on Abe or any of that for money. So the big scheme is hatched to use this drug, or to try and convince Abe to give them a better cut.
Yeah.
On this run, because they're going to do a protection run for a drug delivery of his down to L.A. I forget exactly.
Vegas. I think it's to Vegas.
Vegas. Yeah, some proper noun.
Yeah.
And that's where we're coming in with this.
And then basically they bet him, hey, if our champion fighter can beat your champion fighter, you're gonna give us the shot. And
right, the stakes are real high. It's either that their human is gonna beat this insane beast of Abe's human. If they win, they get 15% of the money, 15 or 30% of the profits. And if they lose, they do it for free.
Yeah.
So big deal.
So they inject this medication into. Oh, go ahead.
Well, so there's this great bit before where they don't know. So they have a stock of humans that they're training for this fight, but none of them feel like they can beat this big guy, this big crusher. So Johnny comes in, the hero come home, and he looks into the eyes of one of them, and he can immediately tell this one's the killer. And it's like the scrawniest one,
right?
But he can see it in his eyes, like he's the killer.
Yeah, he's basically what's his face in Pet Detective 2, where he's the little Tommy Davidson, he's brought in the strap, and Jim Carrey has to fight him.
Yeah, yes, the spears.
Yeah.
So
in the thighs.
Yeah, and it's like one of the I love this bit because like it's again one of the big both Johnny and Bobby moments, because Johnny just acts with this insane certainty that's deeply reflective of what he's been through. Meanwhile, Bobby has this confidence that's completely rooted in just like love and respect of everybody around, or like his people. And in himself, because like it goes from the scene of him negotiating with Abe, being like, fuck off, Abe, I hate you, but this is what you're doing for us, and rolling it, even just like completely just, yep, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Against these impossible odds. Everything's on the line. Johnny just says, this scrawny, weak-looking one is the one, and Bobby's like, yep, that's it. You're the guy. My brother says it. It's true.
Yeah, so they give him this drug, and he just goes ape shit. This is one of the most gruesome fights
Oh, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Two naked men just beating hell
one
out of
huge,
each other.
The other scrawny, but yeah, the scrawny one just basically brutally
rips
Mortal
his
Kombating
face open.
him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just bit by bit bites his ear off, then jumps on top of him, pulls his cheeks out, rips out his
all the way
jawbone.
back to his ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then rips his jaw.
And then wears his lower jaw as a crown.
Yeah. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And then,
we've read a lot of books with ultra violence, and I've always said I kind of get sick of it. I get kind of burned on it. We've read all of Preacher. I get kind of
I've got opinions about Preacher we can come back to.
And so I just kind of get tired. It's like it's almost violence for violence sake. This, once again, it furthers the story. You understand more of the language and emotions and drives of the world and what's
just the
happening.
brutality of this.
Yeah.
Being in this club.
And this is what like Preacher goes for, but often doesn't achieve. Like this has style.
Right.
It has authenticity.
Right.
Like it's something that is made like it's just very sincere about saying, no, it's just cool. And it makes sense here.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I have a feeling Francis would not like this book.
Oh, God, no. The first instance of the penis and the blowjob, negative.
Can't hack it, huh?
She's very Catholic. She's very reserved.
I used to be, too.
Yeah, that's right.
House.
You were. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. So they win the wager, and book basically ends on that.
Yeah, they're set up to go make the run. And one of the things I wanted to point out, I'd really be remiss. So there's this really cool culture built around the humans, very small. In the back, just like as a kind of common with trade paperbacks, you have all these guest artists do this like single page art. One of them is from Skinner.
Oh yeah, that's right. Skinner did that one.
Yeah,
local hero, hometown.
Used to be local, now an Oakland guy, but
Yeah.
still a hero and still lives on in our hearts. And you can see some of his work at Big Brother.
That's right. He's got that awesome Marvel
Zombies thing. Yeah.
Oh, he was the one who did that one?
Yeah, that's Skinner.
Oh, my gosh.
I've got a Skinner painting in my house. I bought back when he was...
Incredible.
Yeah, I bought before he was famous and big. Like, I bought it for $40. I'm like, I wonder what this would be worth now.
Don't look it up. You don't want to know. Because you're going to sell it to me for $60. That's why you're not going to look this up.
So that's a pretty good deal, $60?
I'll be honest with you, 65.
Okay.
That's a good deal.
Plus a pack of Magic the Gathering cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So $69.99.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've never lost at Magic.
Yeah, it's because you never won
I've
either.
Never played.
Yeah.
Because I've never played it.
I know you're kind. I see the fear in your eyes.
You muggles. Is that what you call us?
Yeah. So one of the things that's really worth pointing out too is that they actually there's actually like music that goes with this.
What?
Lots of bands did stuff. So like one of my favorite bands, Ghoul, did.
No way.
Yeah. Ghoul did one. Wizard Rifle did one.
Because they have, I mean, there's a couple
there are
different times
7
where
inches.
there's full lyrics. Like they go at
Yeah,
the
they're
Bands
like-
are playing at the house parties.
The bands are playing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that, again, I look at stuff like that and I can just tell that there's this unifying core of like creativity and just the Humans is clearly a book by people who just say, yeah, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I just
Right.
want to do this. And it is. It's like I would hesitate to call it like a masterwork or something, but it's one of those things that has such clear vision and tone
Yeah.
and coherency.
The world building was done very, very well.
Even more so than like books that you would call like the greatest books of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of where they go and how they're expressed. Like I think I always go back to Saga the Swamp Thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is more focused than that. This has a clear idea of what it's doing than
Yeah.
one of the greatest books of all time. One
Well,
of the greatest runs of all time, right?
And like such attention to detail, like the when you're introduced to all the different gangs that have basically some skin in the game,
Mhm.
and like just all the different, like the Mexican gang has a very distinct like pompadours and little skinny mustaches, and
Yeah.
and then like there's like the leather
The heavy
daddy
metal
Viking
ones.
gangs, yeah, with the spikes.
Yeah, and the Black Liberation Gang.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, like just and every single one of them looks unique and different, and just a
And
lot
complete.
of yeah.
I feel like this see, we'll see if this one's a stretch. But I feel like a good analog to this book for both Dong and consistency of vision is actually Watchmen.
Mm.
If I feel like Watchmen, if you cut off like about half of the iceberg underneath it, maybe 75% of the iceberg underneath it, it is very similar to this. Like this has a complete lived-in world,
Right.
and it's very solid, and everything is very clear, and it has something it's trying to tell you. It just doesn't have very much subtext,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't trying to have subtext, but it's also I feel like when making critical appraisals, it's really easy to kind of lean into. This is kind of a meme in certain circles that I like to pay attention to when it comes to critical thinking. But like the default mode of critical analysis these days seems to be dissection of narrative mechanics, to kind of say like, well, this plot line interacts with this plot line, and this motivation scope like comes together to resemble the Lament configuration this way and unleash the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Whereas, and it's really easy to look and say, like, what was it very deep? Did it have these big messages or themes? This book doesn't have that at all, or at least not in a way. Like, that's not what's important to this book. And yet I feel like to kind of phrase it and talk about it like that could really do a huge disservice to the huge achievement that this book actually is.
Yeah. It's an amazing book. I think we're getting to the point where I recommend it. How about you, Dennis? And-
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I was worried about when I first just kind of looked at the synopsis and kind of just looked through the book, I thought it was going to be really derivative. And it's easy, you could see the inspirations, but it makes it its own unique, world, and it just feels right. Like it doesn't there's things that it that obviously inspired it, but it doesn't rip it off. Like it just feels very unique, and I really loved the art, the writing, just exactly what you were saying, what it was trying to achieve. I loved the book, and I'm definitely going to get the second one.
Is everything wrapped up in the second volume?
Cleanly. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is the series done?
As far as I know,
Okay.
it could definitely continue.
Mhm.
I don't think it should.
Yeah, that's the thing.
but-
Like, I feel like there's so little. There's these threads left where you're like, well, I want to see what.
Yeah.
Who are these? What's going on with this other gang?
I will say that 1 and 2, you pick up both volumes, it will be complete.
Mm.
I really don't want to say too much, but
All right.
it's very much a reading through 1 and then to 2, like reading through these 2 volumes is like watching just one great B movie from the past.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't think it needs a sequel. It stands alone, and it is as it needs to be.
And I like those stories where you want to know about other characters, but they don't answer it. They don't have to. It makes such a good world.
like Star Wars used to do.
Yeah. Well, it makes such a good world that it leaves you wanting more, but you don't have to know it, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So it's easy to say that horror movies, right? You don't
Mhm.
actually want to see the violence because it's worse to imagine it,
Right.
right? Like when I was imagining your
the
your
butterfly knife
story. I think it's the same thing with worlds.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to be said for like showing a very broad world, and not to dunk on people who like that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I think more stories would get better, more mileage out of suggesting a world the way this does.
Yeah, but now we live in a time when people get pissed off when they're like, well, why didn't it do this? Why didn't it say that? And it's like, well, because sometimes it's better to imply or leave it up to you to guess. Like so many people hate the ending of No Country for Old Men because they want to know what happened. It's like,
The
that's the whole
bastards.
point. The whole
Exactly.
point is like, it's up to you to decide if he let her go or if he killed her.
Right. The entire point of the book and the movie is that one Anton Chigurh line. Like, if this is where the rule led you, what use was the rule?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we just live in a culture now where people
has to be
expect
answered.
explanations. They want to know why did this person do that? And sometimes just like, it's okay not to know. It's okay.
I will
to
take this
guess.
opportunity to dunk on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and say, 1, it's fucking garbage. 2, it should be thrown in the garbage. 3, it should be set on fire as the garbage. I blame that for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But, in defense of that kind of thinking, too, you have people who want to create the mystery box a la Lost, and they create all these mysteries.
That's a better analog to go for. Cause
And then they don't answer any of it, and they go, well, it's for you to decide. What's like, you introduced all this stuff, and
Yeah.
then you're
clearly didn't know where you were going.
right,
with all
and,
that.
and you didn't answer any of it, and so now the audience has no answers at the end.
Yeah.
And again, to tie that back to the humans, like, you see this a lot in comic. I feel like this is the case with Preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just do such a good job establishing themselves, and they're like, well, we're here.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do now? And again, that's one of the best things about the humans. It's like never for a moment do you doubt where it's taking you.
Yeah.
And I gotta respect them for, if it's over, I'm glad they decided they were ending it, unlike like Walking Dead, where it's literally a zombie of a comic.
The worst. Sometimes that can work. I did finish, I guess it was just a while ago now, but I did finish reading Invincible. I did the whole
Holy
run.
shit. That's like 2,000 pages or something.
Yeah,
like that, isn't it?
it's like 26 trades, about the same thickness as the humans. Yeah, and it recently ended early this year.
I didn't know he could finish books.
I know, right? It was so funny too, because that book, I like Invincible more than I think I like Invincible. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, oh, I actually did really enjoy that, huh? But it's like popcorn that sometimes there's an M&M in there, and you're like, oh.
You just grudge finished it, basically?
Well, no, because I was actually a little invested.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't. What was so funny is that like you could tell Kirkman was just done with it, because like near the last few books, all of these he was really good at laying down all these plot lines that actually went places and kept things rolling, but he had set too many plot lines into motion. So near the end, when he's finishing them, like entire plot lines will get resolved in like a page. Right?
The end.
Yeah, very, very, and like it was done artfully. You could tell that like maybe another issue might have felt better. It was done well, but it was also just like
Yeah.
it was like Metal Gear Solid 4, where every plot line they were resolving was nanomachines.
Right.
He can survive getting shot in the forehead. Nanomachines.
Clone.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, where can people follow you if you want them to follow you?
Well, so my address is so Twitter is the best way. You can follow me at Anthony Siino, Siino. If you can't spell Anthony, you're not worthy of following me.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's hardcore. So again, you can check me out on Voices River City, the podcast. There's a website where that was founded by Dave Kempa, local freelancer of note. If you don't know him, get following him on Twitter. We do a lot of work with, again, trying to tell stories that aren't being told in the SAC-B, in the News and Review, in Capital Public Radio. They're all telling great stories, but we're trying to go a little more low to the ground, so to speak. So we've had a lot of really great stuff. I recommend that you go check out the podcast, which is tied to this big website. We have some really cool stuff. We've interviewed Philip Kim, who's running for District 4 of the state Senate. He's a DSA affiliated candidate. One of the things that I love to bring up is that, so everybody's heard of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who knocked out Joe Crowley in New York recently. That's a good look you're giving me there.
Yeah, I don't know this story.
Oh, you don't know her? Oh, man.
Yeah, what the hell, dude? So she is a DSA affiliated candidate.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
I thought
DSA
you said knocked out. I was like, there was a fight?
No.
Like,
Well,
kind of.
about a boxing, but no.
Democratic Socialists of America,
yeah.
Anyway, so she made all these waves, taking down this second-in-head DNC party boss and all this sort of stuff. Funny enough, her votes were somewhere below 16,000 votes. But Philip Kim, as a DSA-affiliated candidate, running for District 4, which is like Carmichael all the way up to Butte County, about 1 million people. He took it. He's made it second in the primary with about like 45,000 votes, which supposedly is the most votes for a DSA-affiliated candidate since like 1996.
Damn.
Insane. Anyway, so he played. He also wanted to play some songs, so we recorded him doing some, commie pop punk in my bedroom.
He played
for
the saxophone.
Podcast. Oh man, I wish we could have got that too. Oh, anyway, that's a long way of saying that we do some really cool stuff on the podcast, talking to a lot of really cool people. We just had the folks from Library of Music Landria on. I'm taking this plug for everything I can get.
Get it.
Yeah, and like the Library of Music Landria is like, if you know the band Separate Spines, 2 of the 4 members of it, it's incredible. First off, great local band, great local band. If you like really dynamic, strange pop, incredible shit.
I like Hanson.
Hanson's cool too. Yeah. The episode of Space Ghost with Hanson is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember. I don't think I ever
Where he
saw
takes
that.
them out camping.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And they see him murder the Tooth Fairy, so he has to. Anyway, so they came. So Buddy and Hale of Separate Spines run Library of Music Landria, which is this local library for instruments and recording materials.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And so we did interviews with them, and I really recommend you go check that episode out. It's cool as shit because there's just a lot of great stuff going on in Sacramento, like this podcast. You see it kind of turning back. There's a lot of great shit going on, and we try to tell people about it. And the more people who know about it, the more people you can yell at me and say, well, why the hell aren't you talking about this? And I go, next episode.
Next episode, yeah.
Cool.
Well, thanks for recommending this. I would have never chose to read this book. It just looking at it, I've been like, what the fuck's this about? So, this is definitely under the umbrella of a Siino choice.
Hell yeah.
For sure. So, thanks for...
Siino win.
Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure, man. Or our pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for both of us. I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Whatever.
If you disagree with me saying our pleasure, go for it. All right.
I'll just take all the pleasure.
All the pleasures.
This is not Hellraiser.
Hi, how does this actually sound? 'Cause this is where I'm really going to be here.
Does Smoke still pop up and say, hoopty?
That would, first off, Smoke would never show up. That was Ed Boon.
Is that the name of the character?
Well, it's Ed Boon's voice. No, it's the director.
Yeah.
I thought that was Smoke. That was the name of the...
No, dude, it was
No.
the guy who popped up in the, was it just a wood stage? The
in
scary
Mortal
wood.
No, he'd show up
Kombat
on
2?
all of them. Just like there was a random chance that when you
Yeah.
gave somebody a hard uppercut,
Nice.
come up and say toasty.
Nice.
Oh, was it Toasty? Is that
It
what
was
he said?
toasty, yeah.
Hoopty! No?
Are we recording this?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.